The sky turned dark at noon, not from clouds but from massive ships that blocked the sun. These ships were bigger than any building humans had ever made. They hovered over the small town of Hanseong, casting long shadows across the green hills. Gina. Park stood outside the Hanseong Military History Museum, looking up at the alien ships. Her hands trembled as she gripped her phone. The emergency alerts had been coming for hours, but now they stopped. The cell networks were down. "This can't be happening," she whispered. Gina was 34 years old with straight black hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore the gray uniform of the museum where she worked as a curator. 6 years of study in military history had not prepared her for actual war, especially not war with beings from another world. The radio in her office had reported the same. News all morning. Strange ships had appeared near the moon 3 days ago. They did not answer any calls. Today, they had entered Earth's atmosphere. Similar ships now floated above major cities all over the world. Seoul, Tokyo, New York, London, Beijing. All had the same dark visitors. The first shots were fired by humans. A fighter jet squadron had approached one of the ships when the aliens did not respond to radio calls. The squadron leader fired a warning shot. The alien ship had responded by sending out smaller craft that destroyed the entire squadron in seconds. Now, these ships were landing. One massive ship, shaped like a flat disc with strange bumps and towers on its surface, slowly descended toward the fields outside Hanseong. Gina could see it clearly from her position on the hill where the museum stood. The museum was her responsibility. Her grandfather had started it 40 years ago, collecting weapons from Korea's past and from wars around the world. When he died last year, Gina promised to take care of it. Now she wondered if that promise mattered anymore. People were running in the streets below. Cars packed with families and belongings jammed the roads leading out of town. Police tried to direct traffic, but panic was spreading. Gina heard screams and car horns honking. She should run too, but where? The news said these ships were everywhere. A loud humming sound filled the air as the alien ship settled onto the green field 2 kilometers from town. A door opened in its side, and something came out. Gina raised her binoculars. The aliens were tall, maybe 7 feet in height. They wore armor that seemed to shift colors as they moved, sometimes reflecting the surroundings like a mirror, sometimes turning deep blue or purple. Their helmets had no visible faceplate, just a smooth surface where a face should be. The aliens carried weapons that looked nothing like human guns. They were curved devices that wrapped around the aliens' arms. Occasionally one would point at something, a tree, a fence post, and the object would simply disappear with a flash of light. Gina counted 20 aliens forming a line. Behind them, large machines rolled out of the ship. These machines began digging into the ground, pulling up soil and rock. Her phone buzzed with one final message before going dead. "All citizens evacuate immediately. This is not a drill." Gina turned to go inside the museum. She should pack some things and leave. But as she reached the door, an explosion shook the ground. She turned back to see smoke rising from the center of town. The aliens were moving toward Hanseong. More explosions followed. The military base outside town must have decided to fight. Gina saw flashes of light as tanks fired at the aliens, but their shells seemed to stop in midair before reaching the aliens, exploding harmlessly. The aliens responded with beams of blue light that cut through the tanks like they were made of paper. In 20 minutes, the battle was over. Silence fell over Hanseong again, broken only by distant screams and the alien machines. Gina's legs gave way, and she sat on the museum steps. This wasn't a war. It was extermination. The museum door opened behind her. Old man Kim, the security guard, looked out with wide eyes. "Miss Park, you need to come inside," he said. "The radio says they're killing everyone who resists." Gina nodded numbly and followed him in. The museum was empty of visitors. Most of the staff had fled hours ago when the news first broke. "My son called before the phones went down," Kim said. "He says they're not human. Up close they have 4 arms and move like insects." Is he? "He's heading to the mountains with his family," Kim said. I would go too, but my wife can't travel. She's too sick. Gina nodded. Kim lived in a small house behind the museum with his wife. What about you, Miss Park? Why haven't you left? Gina looked around at the museum displays. Rows of old rifles from the Korean War, swords from the Joseon dynasty, a tank from World War II, her grandfather's life work. I promised my grandfather I would protect this place, she said. It's all I have left of him. Kim's radio crackled. They both leaned in to listen. Reports confirm that conventional weapons are ineffective against the invaders, a scared voice said. Their armor deflects bullets, and they have some kind of shield that stops explosives. The military is falling back to regroup, another voice broke in. We're getting reports that they call themselves the Vixari. They've hacked into our broadcast systems in some areas. They say they've come to take our resources. They say resistance is... The radio went silent. Kim shook. But nothing happened. They've cut the broadcasts, he said. Gina went to the window. From here she could see smoke rising from at least 10 places in town. The alien diggers were tearing up the rice fields. More aliens were moving through the streets. I should go check on my wife, Kim said, heading for the door. Be careful, Gina called after him. Alone in the museum, she wandered through the quiet halls. The displays seemed sad now. All these weapons, all these wars, and humans had never faced anything like this. What good was a museum of military history when history itself might be ending? She stopped at her grandfather's portrait near the main office. I'm sorry, grandfather, she whispered. I don't think I can keep my promise. A loud crash from outside made her jump. She ran to the window. 3 alien ships, smaller than the main one, were landing in the town square. More aliens poured out, moving with purpose. One group headed up the hill toward the museum. Gina's heart raced. She needed to hide, but where? The museum was all glass and open display rooms. Then she remembered the basement, the storage rooms where they kept items not on display. Her grandfather had always called it the vault. She ran to the staff elevator and pressed the button for the basement. As the doors closed, she saw the first alien enter the museum's front door. The elevator descended slowly, too slowly. Gina held her breath, expecting the aliens to stop it somehow. But it reached the basement with a soft ding. The storage area was dark. Gina fumbled for the light switch. Rows of shelves held artifacts in protective cases. Weapons, uniforms, medals, pieces of history waiting to be displayed. At the back of the room stood a large metal door. Her grandfather had installed it years ago to protect the most valuable items. It had a keypad lock. Gina punched in the code. Her grandfather's birthday. The door swung open with a hiss. Inside was her grandfather's private collection. Things too dangerous to display. Things the museum officially didn't own, and among them, in a long wooden case against the wall, was something her grandfather had once called the last argument of humanity. Gina heard noises from upstairs. The aliens were in the museum. She closed the vault door behind her and locked it from the inside. Whatever happened next, she would face it in this room, surrounded by the weapons of her ancestors. Gina's hands shook as she turned on the single light bulb in the vault. The small room was packed with wooden crates and metal boxes. Dust floated in the air. This place had been her grandfather's secret pride, a collection of items too dangerous or controversial for public display. From above, she heard the heavy footsteps of the aliens moving through the museum. Something crashed. They were breaking the display cases. Gina covered her mouth to stay quiet. Her grandfather, Day Park, had been a collector of military history for 50 years. He had connections with museums around the world and sometimes with people who sold things that weren't exactly legal. When he died last year, he had shown Gina this room only once and made her promise to protect it. There are things in here the government would take away, he had told her. Things that might be needed someday. Gina had thought he was being dramatic. Now, with aliens in the building above her, she wondered if her grandfather had somehow known this day would come. She moved to the back of the room where a long wooden case leaned against the wall. It was almost 2 meters long, made of dark wood with metal clasps. A note taped to it said, "Last resort." Gina opened the case slowly. Inside, resting on red velvet, was the biggest rifle she had ever seen. It was nearly 2 meters long, made of dark metal with a wooden stock. The barrel was thick and heavy. Next to it lay several boxes of large bullets, each one as big as Gina's thumb. She recognized it from her studies. It was a PTRD-41, a Soviet anti-tank rifle from World War II. These had been used by Russian soldiers to fight German tanks. They fired massive 14.5mm bullets that could punch through armor. Her grandfather had shown her pictures of weapons like this, but she never knew he actually owned one. It must have been incredibly hard to get. These weren't sold in stores. There was a leather-bound notebook next to the rifle. Gina opened it and recognized her grandfather's handwriting. "I restored this PTRD-41 over 10 years, he had written. The bullets were harder to make. Each one contains a tungsten core that I had specially made. It took me years to get everything right. I pray it never needs to be used, but if you're reading this, then perhaps the day has come. Sometimes the old ways are the answer to new problems." A loud crash from above made Gina jump. The aliens were getting closer. She looked at the massive rifle again. Could she even lift it? The PTRD-41 weighed over 17 kilograms. She had never fired a gun in her life. But what choice did she have? Gina grabbed the notebook and read the basic instructions her grandfather had written. Load from the top. Pull back the bolt. Aim. Fire. The recoil would be very strong. She lifted the rifle. It was incredibly heavy. The bullets were heavy too. She loaded one as quietly as she could, following the instructions. Above her, the aliens had reached the office area. She could hear them talking in strange, clicking sounds. Then, to her surprise, she heard words in Korean. "This building contains primitive weapons," a metallic voice said. "Search it completely." They had translators. They could speak Korean. Gina's blood ran cold. These weren't mindless invaders. They were intelligent beings who had chosen to attack Earth. She heard the elevator moving. They had found it. Quickly, Gina gathered as many bullets as she could and put them in her pockets. She slung the rifle over her shoulder using the leather strap. It was awkward and heavy, but she managed to stand. There was a back door to the storage room that led to the loading dock. If she could get there, maybe she could escape. Gina moved as quietly as possible through the dark storage area. She reached the loading dock door and opened it slowly. Fresh air hit her face. The loading dock was empty. Beyond it was the back of the museum, facing the woods that covered the hill. If she could reach those trees, she might be able to hide. She had just stepped outside when she heard the elevator ding. The aliens had reached the basement. Gina ran. The rifle bounced painfully against her back as she sprinted toward the trees. She was halfway there when she heard a shout. "Human detected." A beam of blue light hit the ground next to her, turning the dirt to glass. Gina dove into the underbrush just as another beam sliced through the air where she had been. She crawled deeper into the woods, breathing hard. The rifle snagged on branches, making noise. She wanted to leave it behind. It was so heavy and loud, but it was her only weapon. From her hiding spot, she could see 3 aliens emerge onto the loading dock. They were even taller up close, with strange, jointed legs that bent backward, like a bird's. Their armor shifted colors to match the surroundings. One of them pointed a device at the ground. "Tracks lead this way," it said in that same metallic Korean. "The human cannot have gone far." Gina held her breath. She needed to move deeper into the woods, but any movement would give her away. The aliens spread out, moving toward the trees. One of them was coming straight toward her. She had no choice. Gina unslung the rifle and laid it on the ground in front of her. It was so long that she had to push the barrel forward through the leaves. She remembered her grandfather's instructions and pulled back the bolt. The alien was 10 meters away now, scanning the bushes. Its helmet had no eyes that Gina could see, just a smooth surface that reflected the trees. Gina's hands were shaking so badly she could barely aim. The rifle was so heavy that she had to rest it on a fallen log. She looked through the simple, iron sights and pointed it at the center of the alien's chest, 8 meters away. 7. She pulled the trigger. The rifle exploded with sound and kicked back hard against her shoulder, nearly knocking her over. Pain shot through her arm. The noise was deafening. Through the ringing in her ears, Gina heard something she didn't expect. A scream. The alien was down, green fluid pouring from a hole in its chest armor. The other 2 aliens turned toward the sound, raising their weapons. Gina couldn't believe it. The rifle had worked. It had punched right through the alien's armor, but now the others knew where she was. She tried to reload, fumbling with the heavy bullet. Her shoulder hurt so badly she could barely move her arm. A blue beam cut through, the trees above her head, setting branches on fire. She ducked down, still struggling with the reload. Then she heard something new. Human voices. Gunfire. The aliens turned toward this new threat. 3 people in Korean military uniforms burst from the trees on the other side of the clearing. They fired assault rifles at the aliens. The bullets seemed to stop in midair before reaching their targets, blocked by some invisible shield. The aliens raised their weapons. One of the soldiers fell, his chest smoking where a beam had hit him. Gina finally got the rifle reloaded. She aimed at the closest alien and fired again. The massive bullet struck it in the back and the alien collapsed. The last alien turned toward her, but it was too late. The 2 remaining soldiers fired at it, and this time their bullets found their mark. Without its companions, this alien couldn't maintain shields for itself and fight at the same time. When it was over, 3 dead aliens lay on the ground. One of the soldiers was dead too. The other 2 approached Gina cautiously. "Who are you?" asked one, a woman with lieutenant bars on her uniform. Her name tag read Lee. "Gina Park," she said, her voice shaking. "I work at the museum." Lieutenant Lee looked at the massive rifle in Gina's hands. "What is that thing?" "A PTRD-41, Gina said. "An anti-tank rifle from World War II. It went right through their armor." The 2 soldiers looked at each other in shock. "Nothing we have can do that," said the male soldier. "Our bullets hit some kind of energy shield around them." Lieutenant Lee knelt by the alien Gina had shot first. This went straight through its shield and armor both. She looked up at Gina with new respect. "Where did you get this weapon?" "It was my grandfather's," Gina said. "He collected old military items." "Are there more of these?" asked Lieutenant Lee. Gina thought about the vault, about her grandfather's collection. "There might be," she said. "And there are other museums, other collectors." For the first time since the aliens arrived, Gina felt something new. Hope. Lieutenant Lee stood up. "We need to get you and that rifle to our commander right away. This could change everything." As they helped Gina to her feet, she looked back at the museum. Her grandfather had been right. Sometimes the old ways were the answer to new problems, and sometimes the past could save the future. The military base was hidden in the mountains, 20 kilometers from Hanseong. Lieutenant Lee drove while Gina sat in the back of the jeep with the heavy rifle across her lap. The male soldier, whose name was Corporal Kang, kept watch for alien ships. "We lost contact with headquarters in Seoul 3 hours ago," Lieutenant Lee explained. "The aliens hit all major military bases first. We were on patrol when it happened. Major Sun ordered all surviving units to fall back to the emergency base." Gina looked out at the passing trees. She could see smoke rising from Hanseong in the distance. "How bad is it?" "Bad," Corporal Kang said. "These aliens, they call themselves the Vixari. Their weapons cut through our tanks like paper. Our bullets bounce off their shields. Fighter jets explode before they get close. It's the same all over the world." They turned onto a narrow dirt road that climbed up the mountain. After a few minutes, they reached a checkpoint where soldiers with tired faces waved them through. The base was small, just a few buildings dug into the mountainside. Soldiers moved quickly between them, carrying supplies and weapons. Everyone looked scared. Lieutenant Lee parked the jeep and led Gina to the largest building. Inside, a group of officers stood around a table covered with maps. A short, stern-looking man with gray hair noticed them and walked over. "Major Sun, Lieutenant Lee saluted. We found a civilian with something important. The major looked at Gina and the massive rifle she carried. His eyes widened slightly. Is that what I think it is? PTRD-41, sir, Lieutenant Lee said. Soviet anti-tank rifle from World War II, and it works against them. We saw it penetrate their shields and armor. Major Sun turned to Gina. You fired this weapon? Gina nodded. It was my grandfather's. He collected old military weapons. She killed 2 of them, sir, Corporal Kang added. Shot right through their fancy armor. The room went quiet. Everyone stared at Gina and the rifle. Major, Sun gestured to the map table. Come with me. He showed Gina a map of Korea with red marks all over it. The red spots are Vixari landing zones. They've established bases in every major city. Seoul fell 2 hours ago. What do they want? Gina asked. Resources, a woman in a lab coat said, stepping forward. I'm Dr. Song. We intercepted some of their communications. They're mining for metals, especially rare earth elements. They take what they want and kill anyone who resists. Major Sun pointed to the rifle. Tell me exactly what happened when you fired this. Gina explained how the bullet had gone straight through the alien's shield and armor. She showed them her grandfather's notebook with his notes on the rifle and the special ammunition he had made. Dr. Song examined one of the large bullets. Interesting. Our modern weapons are designed for speed and accuracy, firing small bullets, very fast. But this is just brute force, a massive bullet moving at a lower speed but with enormous power. Their shields must be calibrated for modern weapons, Major Sun said. Fast, small projectiles or energy weapons. They weren't expecting something like this. There's more in my grandfather's vault, Gina said, and there are other museums, other collectors with old weapons like this. Major Sun nodded slowly. We need to test this properly. He turned to Lieutenant Lee. Set up a firing range. I want to see this weapon in action. Behind the base, they set up a test area. They had salvaged pieces of Vixari armor from dead aliens. These were mounted on wooden posts at different distances. A crowd gathered to watch. Gina felt nervous with so many eyes on her. Her shoulders still hurt from firing the rifle earlier. Dr. Song helped her prepare. Rest the rifle on this sandbag. It will absorb some of the recoil. Gina positioned herself behind the rifle, aiming at the closest piece of alien armor 30 meters away. She took a deep breath and pulled the trigger. The rifle boomed, kicking, back against the sandbag. The massive bullet struck the alien armor and punched a clean hole through it. People cheered. Major Sun ordered them to try again with 2 pieces of armor placed together. Again, the bullet went through both pieces. Door works, Major Sun said, a hint of hope in his voice. It actually works. Dr. Song examined the holes in the armor. The Vixari use an energy shield that stops fast objects. Behind that, they have physical armor. Modern bullets are stopped by the shield. But this old rifle fires a bullet that's slow enough to get through the shield, yet powerful enough to penetrate the armor. Like throwing a rock instead of a bullet, Lieutenant Lee added. Exactly, Dr. Song said. Their technology has a fundamental weakness. They prepared for our most advanced weapons, but not for something this old and simple. Major Sun turned to Gina. We need more weapons like this, and people who know how to use them. I can help find them, Gina said. But I need to get back to the museum. There are other old weapons there and my grandfather's notes. Major Sun hesitated. It's dangerous. The Vixari are all over Hanseong now. I know the museum better than anyone, Gina insisted. I can get in and out without being seen. After a long moment, Major Sun nodded. Take Lieutenant Lee and a small team. Get whatever weapons you can find. We'll start training people to use them. That night, Gina ate with the soldiers in the base cafeteria. The food was simple, rice and canned meat, but she was too hungry to care. She sat with Lieutenant Lee, whose first name was Minji. How did you join the army? Gina asked. Family tradition, Minji said. My father was a soldier, and his father before him. What about you? How did you become a museum curator? My grandfather, Gina said. He loved history, especially military history. He taught me everything he knew. I never thought it would be useful in an actual war. Minji smiled. Life is strange that way. A soldier rushed into the cafeteria. Major Sun wants everyone in the, command center now. The Vixari are broadcasting on all channels. They hurried to the command center where a large screen showed the face of an alien. It had removed its helmet, revealing a head with pale blue skin, large black eyes, and no visible nose or ears. When it spoke, its thin mouth barely moved, but perfect Korean came out. People of Earth, it said. I am Overlord Thraxus of the Vixari Dominion. Your world now belongs to us. We require your planet's resources. Resistance has been noted and will be punished. Surrender all weapons and report to collection centers in your cities. Those who cooperate will be allowed to live as workers. Those who resist will be eliminated. The screen showed images of destroyed cities: New York, London, Beijing, Seoul. Then it showed alien soldiers rounding up humans and putting them on large transport vehicles. You have 12 hours to comply, Overlord Thraxus continued. After that, we will assume all humans outside collection centers are hostile and will be treated accordingly. The broadcast ended. The room was silent. Major Sun stood up. Nothing has changed. We fight. But how? A soldier asked. You saw what they've done to our cities. Major Sun pointed at Gina. We have a weapon that works. We'll find more. We've beaten impossible odds before. Gina felt all eyes on her again. The weight of their hope was heavier than the rifle had been. I'll leave for the museum at dawn, she said. We'll find what we need. That night, Gina couldn't sleep. She sat outside looking at the stars. Somewhere up there, more Vixari ships might be coming. The future of humanity might depend on weapons from its past. And somehow she was now at the center of it all. A shooting star streaked across the sky. Gina made a wish, not for herself, but for all of humanity. Tomorrow the real war would begin. The jeep moved slowly through the forest before dawn. Lieutenant Minji Lee drove while Gina sat in the passenger seat. Two soldiers, Corporal Kang and Private Do-hun, were in the back. All of them wore dark clothes instead of uniforms to avoid being spotted. We'll stop 1 kilometer from the museum, Minji explained. Then we go the rest of the way on foot. Gina nodded. She had spent the night memorizing her grandfather's notes about other weapons in his collection. The PTRD-41 was just one of many old anti-tank weapons he had gathered over the years. They parked the jeep in a hidden spot and continued on foot. As they got closer to Hanseong, they could see the alien activity had increased. More Vixari ships hovered over the town. Strange machines dug into the earth, extracting metals and minerals. They're stripping the planet, Corporal Kang whispered, as they watched from the edge of the forest. The museum sat on its hill, looking untouched. No aliens were visible around it. Perhaps they had already taken what they wanted and left. We move fast and quiet, Minji said. Get in, get what we need, get out. They ran across the open space between the forest and the museum. The back door was still unlocked from when Gina had escaped the day before. They slipped inside and moved through the dim halls. The place had been ransacked. Display cases were broken and many smaller artifacts were missing. But the aliens had left the larger exhibits. They must have seen no value in old human weapons. Gina led the group to the basement elevator, but it wasn't working. We have to take the stairs, she said, pointing to a door marked emergency exit. The basement was dark. Gina used a small flashlight to guide them to the storage room and then to the vault. The door was still closed. She entered the code, and it swung open. This is it, she said. My grandfather's private collection. The soldiers stared in amazement. The walls were lined with rifles, pistols, and other weapons from different eras of human history. In crates and cases were even more. We can't take all of this, Minji said. Just the anti-tank weapons and ammunition. Gina pointed to several long cases similar to the one that had held the PTRD-41. These contain the heavy weapons. My grandfather collected anti-tank rifles from World War II. There's a British boy's anti-tank rifle, a Finnish Lottie L39, and more Soviet models. They began opening cases. Each contained a massive rifle similar to the PTRD-41 but with slight differences in design. We need to check upstairs too, Gina said. There's a display of bazookas and other rocket launchers in the main hall. The aliens left them because they thought they were just for show. Minji nodded. Kang, go with Gina. Do-hoon and I will pack these rifles. Gina and Corporal Kang headed upstairs. The main hall was quiet. Sunlight streamed through the broken windows. They moved to a display of rocket launchers mounted on the wall. There were several from World War II and the Korean War. Are these real? Kang asked. Not just models? My grandfather never displayed models, Gina said. These all work. He had to get special permits from the government. They carefully took down the rocket launchers. There was a German Panzerfaust, an American bazooka, and a Soviet RPG-2. The ammunition is in a locked case in the office, Gina said. They were heading to the office when they heard a sound that made them freeze. The front door of the museum opened and heavy footsteps entered the building. Hide, Kang whispered. They ducked behind a display of ancient Korean armor. Peeking out, Gina saw 5 Vixari soldiers enter the main hall. They carried their strange weapons and moved with a mechanical grace. One of them was larger than the others with more elaborate armor. Captain Kravik, one of them said in their metallic Korean. The humans targeted our patrols with an unknown weapon. 3 soldiers were killed. The larger alien, Captain Kravik, moved to examine a broken display case. What kind of weapon? He asked. Projectile weapon, large caliber. It penetrated shields and armor. Captain Kravik turned slowly, looking around the museum. This building contains old human weapons. Command believes they may have used something from here. Gina's heart raced. They knew. Somehow they had figured out that the old weapons were effective against them. Captain Kravik picked up an old rifle. From a broken display. It was a Mosin Nagant from World War I. He examined it with what seemed like curiosity. Primitive, he said. They use chemical propellants to launch metal projectiles. Inefficient and inaccurate. He tossed the rifle aside. It clattered on the floor. Search this building, he ordered. Find anything that could be used as a weapon. The aliens spread out. One headed toward the office where Gina and Kang needed to go. Another moved toward the stairs that led to the basement. Kang looked at Gina with worry. Minji and Do-hoon were still in the basement, unaware of the danger. We need to warn them, Gina whispered. Kang nodded. He pulled out his radio, but Gina stopped him. The aliens might detect the signal. Then we need a distraction, Kang said. He pulled out a grenade. Gina's eyes widened. That won't work against their shields, she warned. It's not for them, Kang said. It's for the distraction. He pointed to the far side of the hall where a large exhibit of artillery shells was displayed. None of the shells were live. They had been emptied long ago, but the aliens wouldn't know that. When I throw this, run to the basement and warn the others, Kang said. I'll meet you at the back door. Before Gina could argue, Kang pulled the pin and threw the grenade. It sailed across the hall and exploded near the artillery display with a deafening bang. The shells toppled over, crashing to the floor. The aliens turned toward the noise, raising their weapons. Kang stood up and fired his rifle at them. The bullets hit their shields and dissipated harmlessly, but it got their attention. Human, Captain Kravik shouted. Capture it! Gina used the distraction to run for the basement stairs. Behind her, she heard Kang firing and moving, drawing the aliens away from her. She reached the basement and found Minji and Do-hoon loading the last of the rifles into carry bags. Aliens upstairs, she gasped. 5 of them. Kang is distracting them, but we need to leave now. Minji immediately took charge. Take everything we can carry. We leave through the emergency exit. They gathered the heavy weapons and as much ammunition as they could carry. The bags were awkward and heavy, but each of them managed to shoulder one. The emergency exit led to a narrow stairwell that came out behind the museum. As they emerged into the sunlight, they heard gunfire from inside the building. Kang, Do-hoon said, looking back. We can't help him, Minji said, though her face showed pain at leaving a comrade behind. The mission comes first. They ran toward the forest, weighed down by their precious cargo. They were halfway there when a blue beam struck the ground in front of them. Dirt exploded into glass. Gina turned to see 2 Vexari soldiers emerging from the museum. One of them was Captain Kravik. There was no sign of Kang. "Drop one of the bags," Minji ordered. "We need to fight." Gina set down her bag and unzipped it, pulling out a finished Lottie L-39 anti-tank rifle. It was even bigger than the PTRD-41, with a muzzle brake to reduce recoil. She loaded it quickly, remembering her grandfather's notes. The aliens fired again, beams of energy cutting through the air around them. Do-hun was hit in the leg and fell with a cry of pain. Gina lifted the massive rifle and aimed at Captain Kravik. The alien was running toward them, firing as he came. His shield flickered with each step, a blue energy field visible around him. She pulled the trigger. The rifle boomed, the muzzle brake reducing the recoil but amplifying the sound. The heavy bullet struck Captain Kravik in the chest. His shield flashed brightly, then failed. The bullet continued through his armor and out his back. The alien captain fell to the ground, green fluid pooling beneath him. The other Vixari soldier stopped in shock. Minji used the moment to raise her own anti-tank rifle, a British boy's rifle, and fire at the second alien. The shot hit its leg, severing it at the knee. The alien collapsed, screeching in pain. "Let's go," Minji shouted. She helped Do-hun to his feet while Gina grabbed as many of the weapon bags as she could. They hurried into the forest, expecting more aliens to pursue them, but none came. They reached the jeep and loaded their wounded and their weapons. As Minji started the engine, Gina looked back toward the museum. "Kang didn't make it," she said, quietly. Minji's face was grim. "He gave his life so we could get these weapons. We won't waste his sacrifice." They drove back to the base in silence. Gina thought about the alien captain examining the old weapons, dismissing them as primitive. His mistake had cost him his life. Sometimes the old ways were the most dangerous because they were the most unexpected. 2 weeks passed. The hidden mountain base became the center of a growing resistance. People came from nearby towns, bringing whatever old weapons they could find. Hunters brought their rifles. Collectors brought antique guns. Museums sent their historical weapons. Gina became the heart of this strange army. Her knowledge of old weapons made her valuable. She helped organize the collection and taught others how to use them. "The heavier the bullet, the better," she explained to a group of volunteers. "Their shields are designed to stop fast, small projectiles, but slow, heavy ones can get through." They had discovered that not all old weapons worked against the Vixari. Modern hunting rifles were still too fast. But old military rifles, especially those from before 1950, were often effective. The best were the anti-tank rifles and old heavy machine guns. Major Sun entered the training room. His face was grim but determined. "Gather around," he called. "We have news." Everyone stopped their training. Gina stood next to Minji, who had become her close friend over the past 2 weeks. "Our scouts report that Overlord Thraxus himself is coming to Hanseong," Major Sun announced. "He's inspecting the mining operation personally. This is our chance to strike a real blow against the Vixari." A murmur went through the room. Overlord Thraxus was the leader of the Vixari invasion force. Killing him might not end the war, but it would certainly hurt the aliens' operations. "When?" Minji asked. "Tomorrow," Major Sun said. "He'll arrive by ship at noon. We're planning an attack with everything we have." He unrolled a map on a table. Everyone gathered around to look. "The Vixari have set up their main base here in the center of Hanseong," Major Sun pointed. "Overlord Thraxus will land here and tour the mining operations. We'll attack from 3 directions." He began assigning teams. Gina was surprised to hear her name called to lead the main assault team. "Me?" she asked. "I'm not a soldier." Major Sun looked at her steadily. "You know these weapons better than anyone, and you've killed more Vixari than most of my soldiers. The people trust you." Gina wanted to argue, but she saw the faces of the others looking at her with hope and respect. She nodded slowly. "I'll do my best," she said. That night, Gina couldn't sleep. She sat outside, cleaning her grandfather's PTRD-41 rifle. This weapon, over 100 years old, had become a symbol of hope. Minji joined her, sitting on the ground nearby. "Nervous about tomorrow?" "Terrified," Gina admitted. "I'm not a soldier. I'm a museum curator. Minji smiled slightly. And I'm a lieutenant who never saw combat before the aliens came. We're all doing things we never imagined. Do you think we can win this war? Gina asked. Minji was quiet for a moment. Win? I don't know. Survive? Maybe. If we can hurt them enough to make Earth not worth the trouble. Gina looked up at the stars. My grandfather used to say that history moves in circles. The old becomes new again. The forgotten becomes important again. Your grandfather was a wise man, Minji said. We should get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day. Dawn came too quickly. The resistance fighters gathered their weapons and loaded into trucks and jeeps. They had 40 anti-tank rifles, a dozen old bazookas, and various other heavy weapons. It wasn't much against an alien invasion force, but it was a start. They drove, as close to Hanseong as they dared, then continued on foot. The town was unrecognizable. Alien machines had torn up the streets and buildings. The mining operation had created a massive pit in the center of town. Gina led her team to a position overlooking the main alien base. It was a circular structure surrounded by smaller buildings. Vixari soldiers patrolled the perimeter. Look, Minji pointed to the sky. A sleek ship descended from the clouds. It was smaller than the main invasion ships, but still impressive. It landed in a clear space near the base. That's him, Gina said. Overlord Thraxus. They watched as a group of Vixari emerged from the ship. One was taller than the others, with elaborate gold and purple armor. Even from a distance, he radiated authority and power. That's our target, Minji said. Gina raised her rifle, looking through the scope. The Overlord was too far away for a clear shot. They would need to get closer. She gave the signal and her team began moving through the ruins of Hanseong, staying low and out of sight. The other teams were doing the same from different directions. They reached a bombed-out building about 300 meters from the alien base. From here, they had a clear view of Overlord Thraxus as he inspected the mining operation. Gina set up her rifle on a broken wall. She loaded a round and aimed carefully. The distance was at the edge of the rifle's effective range, but she had to try. Just as she was about to fire, alarms blared from the alien base. They had been spotted. Now or never, Minji said. Gina pulled the trigger. The rifle boomed, and the massive bullet sped toward its target. But Overlord Thraxus moved at the last second and the shot missed, hitting a smaller alien instead. They know we're here, Gina said, reloading quickly. Blue energy beams began hitting the building around them. The other teams opened fire, creating a crossfire of heavy bullets and rockets aimed at the alien base. Some found their marks. Vixari soldiers fell as the old human weapons punched through their shields and armor. But there were many of them, and they were returning fire with increasing accuracy. We need to move closer, Gina decided. I need a clear shot at Thraxus. She and Minji moved to a new position, dodging energy beams as they ran. The other resistance fighters provided covering fire, hitting more Vixari soldiers. They reached a small rise about 200 meters from the base. From here, they could see Overlord Thraxus shouting orders, directing his troops to defend against the attack. Gina set up her rifle again. This time, she took her time aiming, remembering everything her grandfather had taught her about shooting. Breathe in, hold, squeeze the trigger gently. The rifle fired. The bullet traveled in a shallow arc, covering the distance in less than a second. Overlord Thraxus was turning to enter his ship when the bullet struck him in the back. His shield flared brightly, then failed. The bullet continued through his body and out the front of his chest. Green fluid sprayed the ground. The Overlord stumbled, then fell. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The Vixari soldiers stopped firing, staring at their fallen leader. Then chaos erupted. Some aliens rushed to their leader's side. Others fired wildly at the human positions. A few turned and ran back to their ships. We did it, Minji whispered in disbelief. Gina reloaded her rifle. It's not over yet. The resistance fighters pressed their advantage, firing at the confused aliens. More fell as the heavy bullets found their targets. Then a new sound filled the air, the roar of jet engines. Gina looked up to see Korean fighter jets streaking across the sky. Somehow the military had gotten aircraft flying again. The jets fired missiles at the alien ships, preventing them from taking off. Ground forces appeared from the edge of town, tanks and infantry that had been in hiding, waiting for this moment. The Vixari, without their leader and caught by surprise, began to retreat. They abandoned their mining equipment and ran for their remaining ships. "They're running," Minji said with wonder in her voice. By sunset, the battle was over. The resistance fighters and military forces had secured Hanseong. The body of Overlord Thraxus lay where he had fallen, proof that the aliens could be defeated. Major Sun found Gina sitting on a broken wall, her rifle across her knees. "Reports are coming in from around the world," he said. "When news spread that we killed their leader, resistance groups everywhere started using the same tactics. Old weapons, heavy bullets. The Vixari weren't prepared for it." "Will they come back?" Gina asked. Major Sun looked up at the sky, now clear of alien ships. "Maybe, but next time we'll be ready." Gina nodded. She thought of her grandfather and the museum he had built. He had preserved the past, not knowing it would save the future. As night fell, people began returning to the ruins of Hanseong. They came to see the place where humanity had won its first victory against the alien invaders. And they came to see Gina, the woman with the old rifle who had shown that humanity still had a fighting chance. The war wasn't over. But for the first time since the invasion began, there was hope. And sometimes, hope was the most powerful weapon of all.